This is TLV1.
The Tel Aviv Review with Gilad Halpern.
Hello and welcome to the Tel Aviv Review, a program dedicated to the word, to the thought and to debate, brought to you by the Van Leer Jerusalem Institute, which promotes humanistic, democratic and liberal values in the social discourse in Israel. I'm your host, Gilad Halpern, and every week I'll be engaging in close encounters of the intellectual kind with writers and scholars, or simply people of ideas of all types and vocations who have done something to make our lives a tad more interesting. My guest today is a Professor Emeritus of Mathematics at the Technion, but more importantly, for the purposes of our podcast at least, he's the chairman of the Israeli Inter-University Forum to Combat Academic Boycotts. Professor Zvi Ziegler, hello and welcome to the Tel Aviv Review.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Only a few weeks ago, Prime Minister Netanyahu told the Knesset panel that Israel has virtually won the battle against PDS, that proponents of boycott of Israel around the world have been beaten and defeated. Is that your impression as well? Your work here is done?
Well, I'm not so sure.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's an ongoing struggle, and we are dealing only with academic boycotts, not the BDS movement in general. But academic boycotts started about 14 years ago. And it's an ongoing struggle. There are sometimes we win, sometimes we lose. We are in the middle.
Would you
Certainly not at the end of the struggle.
Would you say that academia is really at the forefront of this struggle? Is this really the sector that's most badly affected?
I don't think it's most badly affected. I'm not sure the effects are so significant at the moment. But it's in the forefront, yes. It's not that badly affected, but it is in the forefront.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the battle is really won and lost.
So what you're saying, if the effects aren't that devastating yet, what you're saying is you're just preparing for, it's a preventative sort of effort?
No, I don't think it's going to be devastating. I don't think, it's not catastrophic. And it's not a strategic threat on the existence of the State of Israel. But it affects academia, it affects young people, it affects our relationship with other countries and other academias. And if we are complacent, it's going to snowball.
Mm-hmm.
So we are not.
That's good. So you're saying that you can't really think of any either academic, either one researcher or an institution that's been gravely affected by boycott?
Institutions haven't been affected seriously, but there are people who are affected. You know, it's always the one person that can suffer and can be a victim of the boycott. And there are people like that, not many, but there are.
Mm-hmm. People who have been denied research grants, or what do you mean? How are they affected?
Well, there are different ways. I can give you an example of something that happened a year ago. There are a few that are scattered, and we are handling them when we know and when we are sure that it really is a result of a boycott and not something to do, with these professional qualifications. Because some people can say, I'm denied a grant of something because I'm an Israeli, and it just happens that the grant application is not so good.
Right.
That happens also. Mm-hmm. But if there are cases where it's clear and obvious that there is a boycott-related denial, then we do something about it. And I'll give you an example. There was a case in France where a researcher in biological sciences published a paper and said that the results are based on his lab material. And the two Israeli researchers asked for the material because that's the way it's done in biological sciences. You have to be able to reproduce the research, the lab. And he denied them, and he wrote a letter that I'm not sending the material because you are Israelis. So that's a blatant, sort of actions that's not tolerable. And what we did was we consulted with people in France, in the legal profession, and in his university, this person's university, and we told them that boycotts are illegitimate totally, and the person was disciplined, reprimanded, and, this is a case where we can handle.
Are there any legal provisions for that? There's, of course, the moral argument to be made, but can you really say that that person has been illegally discriminated against?
In this particular case, yes. But that was, an extreme case.
Yeah.
And we could
it's
handle
very
it.
Clear cut.
Because in France, there are regulations against boycotts and, anti-discrimination. We could handle that. In many other cases, it's not so clear cut, but it's still a boycott and it's not tolerable. And then we use academic sanctions. Academic sanctions meaning since a person violates professional ethics, not legal, but professional ethics, we reach out to the university, to the people in the profession, and tell them here something is done, which cannot be done, shouldn't be done. And that works sometimes as well.
Oh, so they're being disciplined by the peers.
The academic community. Mm-hmm. It's nothing to do. We don't use, we are totally unrelated to government versus government. We are not dealing with governments, and we are not dealing with politics.
So
we are only interested in academia and academic principles and academic ethics.
So what you do stays within the confines of the academic community and rarely goes beyond that.
We are definitely staying within the...
But what happens when there are academic institutions like the AAA or the Anthropological Association in America, where it is really a big academic association that votes to boycott Israel? What do you do then?
Okay, that... Fortunately, in the last, I was appointed by the Committee of Heads of Universities to handle this issue of an anti-academic struggle, anti-academic boycott struggle, 2 years ago. And since then, there was only one incident of an organization that decided to boycott Israel. The Anthropological Association, by the way, had a motion that was brought to a vote by all members, and it was rejected. But there was only one in 2 years that passed. Mostly,
which is the American Studies Association?
No, that was 2.5 years ago. And that really brought it to the fore and started, us getting involved seriously.
Right.
But that was American Studies Association in 2013. But since the summer of 2014, when I was appointed, there was only the National Women's Studies Association. It's a smaller organization, and it's the only one that passed the boycott resolution. But it's not for lack of trying, because they tried, the Anthropological Association, American Historical Association, Modern Language Association. There were about 5 or 6 efforts that failed. So as I said in the beginning, there are sometimes some battles we win, some battles we lose, but it's an ongoing struggle. I think we're doing rather well as far as the institutions are concerned. Universities, none of them boycotts Israel. All university presidents and high administrations are totally and absolutely against it. All senior academic organizations, such as national academies, are against boycotts. And
you're talking about blanket boycotts? Because
academic boycotts of Israel.
But does the University of Ariel in the West Bank settlement, does it get the same treatment as other universities within Israel proper, or do you see a difference there?
We haven't seen a difference coming from outside. They haven't heard complaints from Ariel about being boycotted, and the American universities abroad don't boycott Ariel. There was one effort at boycotting Ariel in Spain a couple of years ago, and the university fought. No, we were not involved, but fought it by legal means, and that worked.
Right. And would you say that there are certain disciplines that are more prone to being at least called to be boycotted than others?
Absolutely. There is what's called STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, as a branch, and that part doesn't boycott. Almost never, and there is a very strong feeling against boycotts, both here and abroad. When you talk about social sciences and humanities, there are some people that are trying. Those associations that I mentioned earlier, were all
American
of them
Studies, Anthropological, Women's Studies.
All of them. By the way, the American Studies Association, the boycott resolution passed as an institutional boycott, but it was not implemented, because the implementation was immediately reacted to. The response was very strong by American institutions, universities and so on, that disassociated themselves. And it just was not implemented at all.
Maybe because the proponents cared more about the declaration than the actual implementation.
I think that's part of the story. It's not only if they fail, like they usually do, it still doesn't mean that they failed absolutely, because they brought the case, Israel as a bad country and whatever.
Why do you think STEM, the hard sciences, are less prone to that? Is it because the contribution of Israel in this field is greater than the others, or is it just that mathematicians and engineers don't really care about politics?
No, they do care about politics. They care very much about politics, but they think that science and politics don't mix, and it's like médecin without, sans frontières. You're a medical doctor. You don't ask the person what his political views are, right? Mm-hmm. And when you invent a drug, you don't want to do that. People in the hard sciences feel very strongly that advancement of science and technology is very important for humanity, and boycotts hamper that. Boycotts destroy the spirit of cooperation. Mm-hmm. And the humanities, sometimes they think, they are not so clear-cut.
Yeah. Is that really the case that you make when you apply to these international institutions? You say what boycotts do is stifle science?
Very much so. And we fought for that. And, there are people of different views in Israel. I mean, everybody knows it's a very pluralistic society. And there are people who are opposed, even strongly opposed, to the policies of the Israeli government. But all senates of the universities adopted a resolution stating exactly that, that hampering science and cooperation is against human progress. And this principle is accepted by a very important organization, the umbrella organization of all national academies, had a resolution with a universality of science principle. Mm-hmm. And that included all of those rejections of any discrimination on the basis of race, gender, whatever, but also ethnic origin and political views and whatever,
Mm-hmm. So
totally against.
What do you say to those proponents of the boycott who say this is, after all, a non-violent measure to express our moral obligation to take a stand on what Israel does to the Palestinians? Is it not legitimate?
It's definitely legitimate to discuss it. It's definitely legitimate to have views about it and say that Israel is misbehaving. It sometimes is. But there is a line that shouldn't be crossed, and the line is where you want to do, cooperation, science, and that is a line that is not to be crossed.
Mm-hmm. And you say that, by and large, your calls don't fall on deaf ears abroad. The sentiment within the scientific community is overwhelmingly in favor of your view that academic and human progress should not be stymied.
It definitely is. But there are always, people who are, in a minority, but people who think otherwise. And we try to convince them, and persuasion and arguments. And unfortunately, since most of the academic community thinks the way we do, it generally works. Mm-hmm. But it's a struggle.
What about Israeli academics within Israeli universities that call for boycott? Do they fall under your mandate as well, or is it beyond that?
There are very few. And we try to convince. Some people think that it's illegitimate to boycott your own institution. But we don't deal with that because people have views. We are totally for freedom of speech, freedom of expression. And if some people have totally erroneous views, let it be.
It's their problem, not
It's
yours.
their problem.
Yes.
Yeah. I want to say there is a Facebook account that we have and an email account. If people want to discuss and talk and report incidents, that's the place. Now, the Facebook is No Academic Boycotts, one word. And the email is No Academic Boycotts, again, one word, at gmail.com.
Gmail.com. All right, and this takes you directly to you, the chairman of the Israeli Inter-University Forum to Combat Academic Boycotts. Professor Zvi Ziegler, thank you very much for coming in today.
Thank you very much for having me.
And also big thanks to Alex Benish, our sound engineer, and to the Van Leer Institute for the generous support. If you like this podcast, there are many more where it came from. Just go to www.tlv1.fm/podcasts and take your pick.
Days of hunger, won't you buy